Gaga, over this way! Gaga!
So I walk in.
Yeah.
I have them take a picture with this a bit. And then I reveal?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, right when you know the sweetest spot.
Inside secret celebrity parties, what really happens when the cameras turn off?
The Emmy
And the Oscar.
and the Grammy goes to...
We live in a culture that thrives on fame and recognition.
Oh my God. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart.
And the doors quietly close. The world of celebrity parties isn't what you see on red carpets or Instagram stories. It's something far more controlled, far more selective, and far more hidden.
Did you have that wanting everybody to like you and not wanting to disappoint
I
anybody?
did. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Behind private invitations, guarded entrances, and strict no-phone rules, a completely different atmosphere takes shape.
Dangerous mix of fame and fortune that can too often lead to reckless excess.
Not chaos, not fantasy, but influence, networking, and carefully curated access. Who gets invited, and why do some of the biggest names in the world show up without ever posting a single photo? And if these events are so exclusive, what exactly are they protecting from the outside world? Because once you start looking past the glamour, you realize these parties aren't just celebrations. There's something else entirely. There's a version of celebrity life you've already seen. Flashbulbs exploding on red carpets, carefully posed photos, champagne glasses raised just high enough for the camera. It feels loud, glamorous, almost chaotic. But what if that version is just the decoy? Because the real story begins when the cameras disappear. Behind unmarked entrances, inside penthouses that don't show up on public listings, beyond guest lists that are never released. There's another layer of celebrity culture that operates with a completely different set of rules. These aren't parties in the way most people imagine them. They're controlled environments, curated rooms, spaces where access itself is the currency. And the first thing that separates these events from everything you've seen online is simple. You're not allowed to record them. No phones, no photos, sometimes even no staff beyond a tightly vetted circle. Devices are either sealed, surrendered, or outright banned. Which raises a question most people never think to ask. Why would some of the most photographed people in the world suddenly want complete invisibility? Because visibility is power, but so is privacy. And when you control both, you control the narrative. Take events like the Met Gala after parties. What the public sees is the official entrance, the outfits, the interviews, the spectacle. But once that portion ends, a different kind of gathering begins. Smaller, more selective. Often hosted in private venues across the city with guest lists that shift dynamically throughout the night. The tone changes immediately. No press, no official documentation. Conversations that aren't designed to be quoted or reposted. And suddenly, the same celebrities who just performed for millions are operating in a space where nothing leaves the room. So again, what changes when there's no audience? Because without an audience, behavior shifts. Conversations deepen, deals begin. And that's where the surface-level idea of celebrity parties starts to break down. These events aren't just about celebration. They're about alignment. Think about the guest list for a moment. It's never random. You'll see actors, yes, but also tech founders, fashion executives, music producers, investors, brand strategists. People from completely different industries brought into the same space under one condition. They all hold influence. So what happens when influence gathers in private? Opportunities, partnerships, not negotiations that would never happen in a boardroom. Because here's the part most people underestimate. Informal environments often produce the most powerful decisions. Without contracts on the table or cameras in the room, conversations become fluid. Ideas are tested in real time. Relationships form faster. And sometimes, the biggest deals don't start with a meeting. They start with a conversation at a party no one even knows happened. Now zoom out for a second. If that's the function of these gatherings, then the party itself isn't the point. It's just the container. The real value is access. And access at this level is incredibly controlled. You don't just get invited. Invitations are often extended through networks, mutual contacts, brand affiliations. Sometimes you're brought in because of your current relevance, sometimes because of your future potential, and sometimes because of who you can connect to someone else in the room. So the question becomes, are you attending because of who you are or because of what you represent? Because in these spaces, identity is leverage. Now let's talk about exclusivity. There are tiers to this world. Large-scale events like the Coachella might feel exclusive to the average attendee, but within them exist even smaller, more restricted gatherings. Invite-only villas, brand-sponsored compounds, private estates where the guest list is filtered down to a fraction of a fraction. And the deeper you go into those layers, the quieter it gets. No branding, no public announcements, no visible structure, which again leads to a deeper question. If something has no public presence, does it even exist in the way we understand it? Or is it operating on an entirely different level? Because that's what these parties begin to feel like. Not just hidden, but intentionally untraceable. And that's by design. Privacy at this level isn't just about avoiding leaks. It's about preserving freedom. The ability to speak openly, to explore ideas, to exist without the pressure of constant observation. But there's also another side to that. When there's no record, there's no accountability. And that duality is what makes this world so difficult to fully understand from the outside. Because for every story that surfaces, there are hundreds that don't. For every photo that leaks, there are entire events that leave no digital footprint at all. So, what exactly happens inside? Let's strip away the myths for a moment. Contrary to the exaggerated narratives you might see online, most of these gatherings are not chaotic free-for-alls. They're structured in subtle ways. Music, lighting, guest flow, seating arrangements, all designed to facilitate interaction without forcing it. People move between circles. Conversations overlap. Introductions happen organically. And in between all of that, something more important is happening. Information exchange. Not always formal. Not always intentional. But constant. Who's working on what? Which projects are in development? Which brands are expanding? Which opportunities are opening up? In a way, these parties function like live networks. Dynamic, shifting, constantly updating. And if you're in the room, you're plugged into that network. But if you're not, you don't even know it exists. Now think about the psychological impact of that. There's an entire layer of influence operating in parallel to the public world, making decisions, forming alliances, shaping trends without ever announcing itself. So when you see a sudden collaboration, a new brand launch, or an unexpected partnership, how often do you assume it started in a formal meeting? And how often did it actually begin in a room like this? Because the truth is, these environments compress time. What might take weeks of scheduled meetings can happen in a single evening when the right people are in the same space. And that efficiency is incredibly valuable. But it also makes these gatherings essential, not optional. Which explains why even the busiest, most high-profile individuals make time for them. Not for the party, but for what the party enables. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Because while access is limited, observation is even more restricted. You can be in the room and still not see everything. There are inner circles within inner circles. Conversations that happen away from the main floor. Private rooms within already private spaces. So even among attendees, there are layers of access. Which raises a subtle but important question. At what point does exclusivity stop being about entry and start being about proximity. Because getting into this party is one thing, being in the right conversation is something else entirely. And that distinction defines everything. Now, consider the role of brands in all of this. Luxury companies, tech firms, fashion houses, they don't just sponsor events for visibility. They use these environments to position themselves within specific networks, to align with certain individuals, to become part of conversations that shape future trends. In other words, they're not marketing to the public, they're marketing to influence. And that strategy is far more precise. But again, none of this is visible from the outside. Which brings us back to the core idea. What you see is curated. What you don't see is where the real movement happens. And once you understand that, it becomes difficult to look at celebrity culture the same way again, because the red carpet isn't the destination, it's the entry point, the visible layer designed to capture attention, while everything that truly matters unfolds somewhere else. Quietly, deliberately, and almost entirely out of sight. So the next time you scroll past a glamorous event, a perfectly lit photo, or a headline about a wild celebrity party, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, this the real event, or just the version you're allowed to see? Because in the next part, we're going to step even deeper into this hidden world, the unspoken rules, the power dynamics, and the subtle signals that determine who rises, who fades, and who never even gets close to the door in the first place. By now, you've seen how these parties operate on the surface and just beneath it. But the deeper layer isn't about music, luxury, or even exclusivity. It's about power. Because once you move past the guest lists and the aesthetics, you start to notice something far more calculated happening inside these rooms. The energy isn't random, the interactions aren't accidental, and the outcomes are rarely left to chance. So what actually determines who matters in these spaces? It's not just fame, it's positioning. Take someone like Leonardo DiCaprio. He's known for attending some of the most exclusive private gatherings in places like Cannes or during high-profile festivals. But he isn't just there as a celebrity guest. He represents access to film financing circles, environmental initiatives, global networks of influence. When he walks into a room, he doesn't just bring status, he brings opportunity. And that's the real currency here. Because in these environments, people aren't just evaluated based on who they are, but on what they can unlock. Connections, deals, visibility, expansion into new industries. So ask yourself, if two people are equally famous, but one has stronger business leverage, who do you think becomes more valuable in that room? Now extend that idea further. These gatherings often operate on unspoken hierarchies, not announced, not labeled, but clearly felt. There are individuals everyone gravitates toward, others who move between circles effortlessly, and some who, despite their fame, remain on the edges, watching, waiting, trying to break into conversations that never fully open, which leads to a subtle but critical distinction. Being invited doesn't mean being influential, and influence in these spaces is everything. Now let's talk about behavior, because one of the biggest misconceptions is that these parties are chaotic or unstructured. In reality, they're governed by a kind of silent etiquette. You don't approach aggressively. You don't dominate conversations. You read the room. You understand timing. You know when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. Why? Because reputation travels fast in closed networks. One wrong interaction, one misplaced comment, one breach of trust, and doors that took years to open can close instantly. So, while it might look like freedom from the outside, inside it's actually a highly controlled social environment, and that control extends to information. Conversations here often carry weight, early-stage ideas, potential collaborations, strategic moves that haven't been announced yet, which is why discretion isn't just appreciated, it's expected. This is also why the no phone rule matters so much. It's not just about privacy, It's about protection. Protection of ideas before they're ready. Protection of relationships before they're public. Protection of moments that aren't meant to be consumed. But again, this creates a paradox, because when everything is hidden, speculation fills the gaps, stories get exaggerated, myths get created. Narratives drift further from reality. So what's real and what's projection? The truth is, most of what happens in these spaces is far more strategic than sensational. Yes, there's luxury. Yes, there's indulgence. But those are secondary layers. The primary function remains consistent. Connection. And connection at this level is rarely casual. Now consider the role of timing. Many of these gatherings aren't random. They're aligned with major global events. Film festivals, fashion weeks, award seasons. Moments when influential people are already concentrated in one location. For example, during the Cannes Film Festival, the public sees premieres and press conferences. But behind that, entire networks are forming in private villas, yachts, and invitation-only events. Deals are initiated. Projects are pitched. Partnerships are quietly negotiated, all while the world focuses on the red carpet. So the visible event becomes a kind of cover layer, drawing attention outward while the real activity happens inward. And once you recognize that pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Now, here's where things get even more layered, because not everyone in these rooms is there for the same reason. Some are there to expand, some are there to maintain, and some are there simply to observe, to understand the landscape, to map the dynamics, to prepare for future moves. And that last group? They're often the most dangerous, because while others are talking, they're analyzing. While others are celebrating, they're studying. And in environments like this, awareness is an advantage most people underestimate. So let's pause for a moment and ask something deeper. If influence is built in private and visibility is performed in public, which one actually defines success? Because the more you look at this world, the more it feels like there are two parallel systems running at once. The public system, where attention is captured, where narratives are shaped, where audiences engage, and the private system, where decisions are made, where alliances form, where real power circulates. And the two are connected, but not equal. Now think about how this affects everything you see. A sudden collaboration between two celebrities, a brand partnership that seems unexpected, a career move that appears perfectly timed. From the outside, it looks like coincidence, but from the inside, it might have started months earlier in a conversation that no one witnessed. And that's what makes this world so fascinating. Not because it's hidden, but because it's intentionally hidden. Because visibility is selective, and what you're shown is often just enough to maintain the illusion without revealing the structure behind it. But here's the part most people don't consider: access to these spaces isn't permanent. It's earned, maintained, sometimes lost. Relevance shifts. Influence fluctuates. Networks evolve. So even at the highest level, there's a constant pressure to remain valuable, to stay connected, to stay aligned, to stay needed, which means the party never really ends. It just changes form. And maybe that's the biggest insight of all. Because what looks like leisure is often work. What looks like celebration is often strategy. And what looks like exclusivity is often a filter designed to protect something far more important than luxury control. Control over information, control over access, control over opportunity. So the next time you hear about a secret celebrity party, don't just imagine music and flashing lights. Imagine a room where conversations can shape industries, where introductions can redefine careers, where a single connection can open doors most people don't even know exist. And then ask yourself, If you were in that room, would you know what to do, or would you just be another guest watching something bigger unfold? Now I want to hear your perspective. Do you think these secret celebrity parties are mostly about luxury and entertainment? Or are they carefully designed environments where real power moves happen behind closed doors? What surprised you more? The strict privacy, the hidden hierarchies, or the idea that major deals could start in these rooms without anyone ever knowing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's break this down together. And if you want more deep, cinematic breakdowns that reveal what's really happening behind fame, money, and influence, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who's curious about the truth behind celebrity culture, and subscribe to CelebSpot, because here, we don't just show you what's happening on the surface. We take you inside what's really going on.